One and all, in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, on this Thursday, the 11th of June 2020, we welcome everyone once again to this Jesus Christ of Wesley Guild SA. Without wasting much time, today we've got a very interesting and a very personal topic, personal development and self-leadership. And I think it's important for us to take this opportunity to welcome everyone into this platform. We have a great speaker this evening, Mrs. Mathebe Ngongo. Uthandi is a human being, a female, a feminist, and a child of God. And from her family, Uthandi is a wife to one husband, Umenzi Ngongo, and a mother of 3 beautiful children, a daughter also, an aunt, a sister, and a friend. And she describes herself as a servant, where she serves in different platforms, and is very grateful to God for the following. Personally, that she is a self-leader at home. She's a co-leader of family with a husband. At work, she's a corporate leader, a national business partner, and a manager. At church, as you are aware, she's our youth leader at the Natal Coastal Synod Methodist Church Youth Unit. And in the community, she's a role model, a mentor, and a coach. And in business, she's a leader of Thandeka Holdings and Thandekile Foundation. She's an academic of note. She's a chemical engineer by profession and currently a PhD from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We hope to see that red gown very soon, Ms. Ngongo. And she's a professional graduate member of the Institute of Chemical Engineers, and she'll be leading us on this very important topic of personal development and self-leadership. We'll ask our Reverend Dumiso Ngombo to please open for us with a prayer. Over to you, Mfundisi.
Let's pray. Mathandaze. Igameni loyise lelenyana nelomoya wele. Isebenze yethu Yesu Kristu yaluzile nomhlaba. Thulile kwelanga somandla sondela phambi kwakho. Sibulela somandla ukugcina nokuthandwa nguwe. Nabantu bakho wena Nkosi ngamaxesha onke. Yabagcina, yabanceda endaweni zonke. Sibulela Nkosi olusuku esiphe lona, once more an opportunity to learn, Lord. To sharpen, Lord, our skills, sharpen our minds. Ukuze Nkosi sikwazi ukubheka elizweni sinamandla amatsha. Sisondela kuwe Nkosi ngesimilo ezinzima in the life of our country and what is happening, femicide. Uthixo thembakeleyo Nkosi khona nangalo mzuzu. We bring before you, Lord, now Uthandi as she is about to lead us. Phinda Nkosi umambathise ngamandla kamoya ngcwele. I pray, Lord, for all the women, particularly those in our church, in the whole world. Ubakhusele somandla. Phinda ke Nkosi uthethe ngaye siphile, ngaye sakheke. Siyakucela Nkosi ngoba sikuthembile uyawusenzela ezi zinto ngegameni lamandla leNkosi ethu Yesu Kristu. Amen.
Amen. We just want to apologize for the host of this program, Ms. Nkubeko Faca. She's currently traveling, therefore I'm standing in for her. Without wasting much time, I'm handing over to Mrs. Ngongo to lead us into this topic this evening. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Enkosi kakhulu Mfundisi, and greetings to all the Wesley Guilders and to everyone who's watching this evening. I would like to start by passing a word of appreciation to the Wesley Guild SA team for inviting me to be part of this session. I'm really honored. And I would like to also thank the guys for such a wonderful work that they are doing in this platform. Maybe before we start, I just have a disclaimer. Okay, let me just try and put the slides on. Okay, I think you can see the slide now. So I just want to put a disclaimer that I'm not a psychologist or a professional life coach. You have heard from my background, but I'm just a person who's passionate about personal development and contributing to growth of other persons. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching solely because I'm passionate about it. And then obviously I had to get training on it as part of my own personal development, and also to equip myself so that I can do justice to those that I mentor. So what I'm going to present today is not new information. It is information that is taken from different libraries. So my assumption would be that you've seen some of the information that I'm going to present because we read from common libraries as young people. Maybe the younger youth, you know, those who are in their 20s, maybe they haven't seen it, but 30 years and above, my assumption is that we have seen most of the information that I'm going to present because we learn from common libraries. Okay, and another thing that I want to mention before I get into the session is that I will not be presenting information as is from the books, but I will be presenting my own understanding on how can we better apply knowledge that we consume in pursuit of personal development. And in doing that, I'll be using a lot of examples. Some are personal examples, and some are not really my own experiences, but experiences of those that are close to me. And I'm going to be using a lot of I solely because personal development and self-leadership is something that is personal. It requires an individual. So if I say we, it will feel like I'm giving out a manual of how we all need to develop ourselves. Gandhi, that's not the intent of the session. So I will just be talking from my personal perspective. And as I do that, I would like you to personalize the content for yourself. So when I say I for me, you also say I for yourself, because I would not like us to leave here thinking that the session was all about me. So it's just an opportunity for all of us to do introspection on our own personal development journey as we go along with the presentation. So I'll really just be presenting from my own lens, my own perspective. Lastly, I would like to encourage everyone watching at home to contribute on the comments about your own experiences as we go along with the presentation. Your contribution may assist someone on their self-development journey more than my presentation. So I'd like all of us to contribute in the comments so that we grow together. Okay. So I think it's important that we start with the definitions so that you understand which angle of my conversation is going to be based on. So in my pastoral class at CCMYT, we are class 1, Andumkokelu Tembisa Boldina. Our theme for the year is Let Your Light Shine, which is supported by a scripture in Matthew 5. Yeah. And for me, this is a huge responsibility because the underlying assumption as a representative of God is that I have the light. Ngoba phela, you cannot shine the light if you don't have it. So you can't give something that you don't have. So for me, this then says I as a person need to have moments to take care of me. The light must shine in me first, shine for me, and then shine for my family and for the world. Therefore, it is important that I have moments to top up paraffin in my light so that my light can shine brighter for me and for others. So the steps of topping up paraffin light yami is what I relate to as a personal development or as self-leadership. These are two different concepts, but which has a great impact if applied together. So for me, self-leadership, I internalize it in the following manner. As leaders, most of us are leaders in our own rights. So as leaders, we spend a lot of time focusing on external factors, processes, people, targets, results, whatever you call it. So we're constantly trying to shine the light in shaping and influencing these external factors. But how often do we spend time focusing on ourselves? And therefore, self-leadership is actually about realizing that in order to see better results, I need to spend more time on myself, filling up paraffin, so that my light can really shine brighter and positively influence these external factors. I normally have casual sessions with my son on these self-development topics, that for him to be able to lead other people, he must first demonstrate good self-leadership. Because I believe that once a person masters that, then he or she will win in leading teams, leading departments, even leading the world. So the teenagers that are in high school and institution of higher learnings that are watching now, now since the schools and universities are closed, it's good time for you to capitalize on your gift of self-leadership. What you do now demonstrates how good you are in leading yourself, so that when schools reopen again, you are on top of your game. And then in personal development for me, it is about me as an individual actualizing or realizing my own full potential. I believe that everyone has or is capable of leading, of realizing their full potential, everybody. But because we are in a world that has certain ways of doing life, we end up succumbing to society standard. We end up conforming to traditional ways of doing things. And we think that that's okay. We think that that's it. We think that that's what we were born for, you know. For me personally, personal development is a commitment to never-ending growth. When I think that I have made it as a person, I allow myself to attract other ways of stretching my ability in becoming a better version of myself. So it's a process of becoming, the ability to steer my path and my future to that of my choosing. So I would not like us to really downplay these concepts, because and think maybe it's a natural process. As I grow and learn in my journey of life, I realize even new things about myself that I didn't know. So these processes are some sort of revelation of oneself to oneself, something the universe reveals myself to me, just like it does to you. Uguthi, as an individual, you are way more capable than you think. You have arrived, it's actually the beginning. So Mina, personally, every time when I celebrate a success, which I'm big, I celebrate even the smallest thing that you can think of. I take it as a beginning of a new journey to realizing my full potential. I celebrate it as the beginning. Hence, I say it's a never-ending process of becoming, because all the knowledge that I would have acquired during that experience must be put into practice. And as I do that, I get personal fulfillment. So the process of achieving personal development goals should set our hearts on fire. And for me, it becomes a testimony with my own encounter with God, just like was it Jacob in the Old Testament, in the Bible, where he had an encounter with God. So every time when I feel that I have moved closer or one step closer into realizing my full potential, it becomes my aha moment, you know, a moment of encounter, a moment worth celebrating. Because the Bible says once you have an encounter with God, things never remain the same. So things change for the better. That's why I relate my personal development goals as an encounter with God. So I don't know how you describe your encounters, because I'm sure all of us have our own personal development goals, and we do achieve as we go along. So I don't know if you really relate that as your encounter. It's really your own personal discretion and in your own journey of life. But all I know is that we all have our own encounters with God, and our lives never remain the same. So that is what personal development is for me. I'm sure you also have your own understanding of personal development, and I gather all these thoughts as I read into the libraries, as I said at the beginning. So that's what I describe as personal development, a commitment to never-ending growth. And self-leadership is then a process or steps that I take to fulfill that commitment. Hence, I said these are two related topics that we are talking about. it's a journey. It's not what we do once in a while. It's what I as a person do day in and day out in the process of becoming a better version of myself. So I thought that it's important that we align on definitions so that you understand which angle my conversation is going to be based on. Okay. So I would like to present to you a concept of change as a force to personal development. And yet we've agreed that personal development is an experience, is about experiencing gradual personal improvement that sets our hearts on fire and that gives us a self-fulfillment. So that process requires something in us to change for the better. So when I have refilled paraffin yami in my light will change from being dim to bright. Then I become a force. My light becomes so bright in me, and the light starts influencing positive change into the world. So it's important that we embrace change as a force to our personal development. Because once you have a light, your light becomes so bright, even for you. Hence I say, personal development goals, they set our hearts on fire. So more often as humans, we resist change. I mean, there's coronavirus that is forcing some changes to our lives, and it's painful, it's not easy. We have to adapt to a totally new culture, what we call the new normal. Fourth industrial revolution is forcing changes into our lives. Just before lockdown, I had a very lovely conversation with Intombi in their connectional executive meeting, trying to grasp the concept of 4IR and how we can adapt to the changes that are coming with the 4IR. So it's important to embrace change, to always know that change is good, change is necessary, and change must happen. Or Paul in Corinthians, he expresses the change, he gives us an illustration. He expresses change as an illustration to a child. Oti, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I understood like a child, I thought like a child, and all those things. But when I became older, I put away all my childish things. And also in corporate, we express change into, according to King versions, King 1 being regulations up to King 4, which is digital. So there are changes all around us. And as young people, we must not allow changes to influence us. Rather, we must influence the change, and we can only do that if we master our own personal development. For example, maybe let me just put up an example which I think would be more relevant to those in the corporate space. We need to always take stock of where we are in our personal development journey. If really where we are is good enough for us to flourish and reach our full potential. So I'll make a personal example. When I was an engineer at the refinery, after university, I went straight to the refinery, and that's how I grew to be an engineer. So when I was an engineer there, I realized that after some years of being an engineer, I realized that my light is actually too bright for the four walls of the refinery. I needed to grow. I knew that I'm not made to influence just the manufacturing part of the value chain, which is the upstream in the South African context. But I knew that I am to influence the whole supply chain of petroleum industry from manufacturing up until the product reaches different consumers. And then the next action for me was to look at how can I develop myself and diversify so that it's easy for me to penetrate the business or the corporate side of the business. So it's important that in our personal development journey, we continually ask ourselves if what I do sets my heart on fire. Refill paraffin yako and decide how you want to shine your light so that you understand the types of efforts that you need to put into your own personal development. So for me, I knew that I knew that I wanted to follow a T concept, the T concept, the depth of knowledge and the breadth of interest. I knew that I don't want to just specialize as an engineer, So if I only had one engineering degree and I did not develop myself, then I would not have had a chance of realizing my full potential, of influencing the value chain as I had envisioned. So in this process, I had to open up myself to drastic changes in my career. And I had to embrace those changes because they were a force to my personal development. Therefore, guys, it's important to always have moments of focusing on ourselves as individuals. Take stock of where we are and ask ourselves questions. Am I at my best? Is this why God actually created me and placed me on earth? And if the answer is not positive, remember that change is good, change is necessary, and change must happen for us to reach our full potential. So I'd like to look at the woman with the issue of blood. We remember that woman in the Bible with the issue of blood. So let's take that as an illustration to offer change as a force to personal development. So one thing that we need to acknowledge in this change is that there are lots of noises. There are noises everywhere all around us. And we must avoid to be caught up in the noise that we fail even to realize that iparaphinium say empty kusbanisam. This woman with the issue of blood for 12 years, imagine 12 years. So females will relate to this. So you can imagine how difficult it was for her to maneuver through the crowd, through men, to reach the hem of Jesus's garment. I'd like us to imagine this. I mean, this woman was known by Lali Yonke that she had issues, blood issues. And I can imagine the stigma that she had. I mean, even today as women, when we are on our menstrual periods, there are some people who still believe that we are not pure, that we cannot do certain things. Even today, there's still stigma around seeing a woman who accidentally stained her dress or pants by menstrual blood. It becomes a taboo. But let's look at this woman in the Bible. She goes through all that. She goes through people, men in power. You can imagine the noises around her because of her situation, but she maneuvered herself through that because she was a force. She was focused. She was determined. She wanted to change her situation. And she was certain that if I can touch it, I will be healed. And we know what Jesus did. Wama. You know, why yes at that time. So it's important that we go through difficult situations sometimes in our personal development journey. We know that the system is against us, especially in the corporate space and even in business. You know, the ground is not leveled. So for us, personal development is really not a choice anymore. It's a tool, it's a key for us to penetrate through in order to realize our vision. So there are pillars, or rather elements or enablers, whatever you want to call it, which assist us to systematically work on our personal development goals. I mean, different authors have different elements, but most of them are so aligned, you know, they look so similar. So I just was attracted to these ones that I am projecting to you. So I'm not really going to spend time on describing each, but I will summarize very quickly in the order that actually works for me. And as I talk about me, please guys, just, you know, relate it to your own personal development goals. So first thing that I think it's important for individual personal development is to create a compelling vision for yourself. And that must be supported by a personal development plan, which talk to goals. And this must be anchored by your own personal values, very important. Because as an individual, as an African, as a Christian, as Methodist, as a Wesley Guild, I have my own values, you know, and therefore it's important that whatever I craft as my own vision is anchored by these values. Otherwise, my personal development plan, if it's against my values, then it will frustrate me. And also, friends, it's important that we then harness the will to realize that vision. Otherwise, a vision without a plan is nothing. A vision must be broken down into SMART goals. That is proper planning. And remember at the beginning, I said, it's what we do every day that matters. It's not a once-off moment. Me, personally, because I'm a visual person, I'm sure you can deduce that from the slides that you can see in your screens. I'm a visual person. So the vision board works wonders for me in terms of crafting my personal vision. So I have my own vision board, and that enables me to see my life in a colorful, pictorial manner. So my vision board alone fuels my passion. You know, it gives me energy. It ignites my soul. It sets my heart on fire. And I fully understand that we all have different ways of expressing our personal vision. So we all must just capitalize on what works for you. But it's important that as part of your personal development journey, you craft a vision that is anchored by your values. And one other important factor for me was then to develop a powerful ritual that enables me to keep in check with my own personal development matters. I realized that all great athletes, they have rituals for getting into a peak state to perform at their best. So for me, it's important that we create an environment or a ritual that enables us to check in with our personal development. For me, personally, jogging is one great ritual because it enables me to gather my thoughts, you know, to check in with myself and have conversation with God on matters that are personal to me. So with jogging, I actually kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because one of my personal development goals is to stay healthy. And I know that not all of us exercise, guys, but unfortunately we have to. We cannot fall through the tracks our parents fell because they lacked knowledge. Exercising nowadays is no longer a luxury. We have information at our disposal, so keeping our bodies moving is no longer a luxury, but it's a necessity. And another ritual for me personally is before the lockdown, because now we work from home. Before the lockdown, it's the morning drives to work. My morning drive to work is about 20 to 30 minutes. This space I use solely to have a conversation with God about myself and my vision. In this conversation, there's only one person in the agenda, and that is Uthandi. I don't even discuss my husband. I don't even discuss kids. These convos are just about me. You know, it's me and God at that time. And, you know, you may say maybe I'm selfish, but for me, it's important that I set aside time to refill iparaphiniami in my light. Otherwise, if I don't do that, then my family won't grow, because I need to first shine my light in my own family. That's the first place that my light needs to shine before I even move out to external places. Training and learning. There are different authors. I'll just mention Scott Jeffrey in his book, Self-Actualization Manifesto. He explains nicely the 4 stages of learning anything on your path to self-actualization, which starts from unconscious incompetence to unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. Similarly, there are authors like John Maxwell and coaches like Andre Goodrich. They explain nicely the 4 pillars of self-leadership, starting from self-discovery to self-growth. So I'd like us to read about these things when we have time, guys, if we haven't really read about them before. These are powerful concepts that assist us in our personal development path to self-actualization. So for me, training and learning does not happen in the classroom. What we feed ourselves on a daily basis is what constitutes personal development for me. In fact, we know even in the corporate space that the learning process is now set on a very high percentage to what's on the go and very little on the classroom. So for me, the process doesn't only, the process of training and learning does not only speak to mind component. Personal development must be holistic, you know, covers mind, body, and soul. God gave us a very necessary skills of multitasking. So for me, my vision board is separated into different categories, which seeks to fulfill body, mind, and soul. Then the training and learning is also holistic to support that vision. You know, feeding our knowledge tank is not a luxury, especially as Black community. That's the only weapon we have to crack through the economy, you know. Then the creativity component, our personal development journey requires that we tap to our creativity. I mean, we juggle between being corporate leaders, running businesses, church leaders, being partners to our husbands and boyfriends, parents for some, we are students. I mean, the list goes on. So the world is changing. We need to adapt. It's a lot. There's a lot that's going on. And therefore, it's important that we are creative in our life journey in order to strike the balance. And most importantly, in order to be happy, we must be content. And lastly, motivation. Friends, I'm a huge fan of mentors. Those who are close to me would know that. I don't know how many of you guys follow Ukala Harris. Oh, she's beautiful. I love her. She's the MD of Global Capital Markets, Morgan Stanley, yeah, and the VC of Global Wealth Management. She perfectly captures the importance of having motivation, importance of having a sponsor, a mentor, or a coach. And I started having mentors very early in my career. And I chose those mentors myself. Even now, my next personal development step is actually outside of corporate space. I had to identify mentors who are in the sector that I'm branching off to. And I had to invest on my personal development. Invest money, invest time, and invest in addressing my fears and doubts. Mainly because I've known corporate all my life since I left university. Now that I'm going to a totally new venture, there are fears, you know, there's emotional anxiety. So I had to invest on addressing myself, asking myself questions as to whether this is a good decision for me, asking myself as to whether I must continue with corporate, you know, since I'm happy. And, you know, I'm going to talk about Maslow's just now, where we just become so comfortable in our safety space that we are so scared to stretch our limit. So I had to continuously ask myself, you know, Guti, since you are in corporate and you are happy, I mean, I'm really happy. I'm in a happy space. I'm actually shining my light very bright in the corporate space. I'm influencing the whole supply chain as I had envisioned. But now I think it's time for me to stretch my limits even further. You know, the higher powers, the universe, God, is revealing to me that I'm made for greater purpose than what I'm doing now. And that is where motivation comes in. Mentors serve as our in-check box or check-in box, English, where we get to balance our pH system. They act as our greatest source of motivation. Even us who are mentors, I'm sure there are lots of mentors who are watching now, you would agree that we serve as greatest source of inspiration to those that we mentor. So I'm a big fan of mentors. Actually, our next step, next project with the CYU is to create an enabling environment for mentorship to be established, because I really believe that it has a huge impact into personal development, having a mentor. So I'm sure you would agree that we cannot talk personal development and not talk about Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. So Abraham Maslow explains personal development using a hierarchy of needs, as you can see. From the bottom of the pyramid is basic needs, followed by the psychological needs, up to self-fulfillment needs. Initially, Maslow stated that as individuals, we must satisfy the lower level needs before we progress onto meeting the higher level growth needs. However, at a later stage, he then argues and clarifies himself that satisfaction of a need is not a all or none phenomenon, admitting that his earlier statement may have given the false impression that the need must be satisfied 100% before the next one emerges. And I personally agree with his latter part, but I'm sure you would agree that as humans, it's difficult to even create an environment enabling for one to meditate on self-actualization if the basic needs are not fulfilled. It's like asking for a person living on the street to develop themselves in order to reach their full potential. All they care about at that stage is basic needs, shelter and food, etc. So for them, reaching the bottom part of the pyramid might be their greatest achievement. Likewise with all of us, depending on where we are and what our personal development goals are, we may be able to achieve our full potential in some aspects of life while we are working on some basic and psychological needs and advancing on them. And advancing on them also may mean the greatest achievement for some, which gives us a feeling of accomplishment. Therefore, my interpretation really, or the take-home principle for me on the Maslow's hierarchy of human needs theory is that we must not think that the order of the hierarchy is rigid. It is not rigid. But most importantly, we must not cling to safety or find comfort at the bottom of the pyramid that it hinders us to stretch our limit and reach our full potential. In our journey of life, we must always desire to become the better version of ourselves. Whatever we are, we must be the best one. And then linked to a hierarchy of needs, Maslow in his book, Towards a Psychology of Being, he explains that there are two powerful forces within us, a human condition, a drive for growth and its opposite force, which is a drive for safety. So it's a top of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid. He says growth propels us forward towards a wholeness of self to discover our uniqueness, what Carl Jung calls the individuation process. And then opposite force leads us to defend our current self, clinging to a safety out of the fear of the unknown. So the force of safety keeps us where we are, clinging to the past and afraid of taking chances in order to improve our current condition, be it internal or external. So this safety-seeking side is afraid of independence, is afraid of freedom, afraid of separateness. The very same thing that the growth side is demanding. So the question in these powerful forces of growth and safety is, does it mean that we must throw aside our concerns for safety in the service of our development? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Safety is more of a basic need, a basic human need than growth. In the absence of feeling of safety, the will to grow is generally not there. So I always take an example of my daughter. I have a son and two beautiful daughters. So if my daughter is clinging on my leg while she attempts to walk for the first time, if I quickly move away, she would likely to stop her efforts and sit down until they break through the dependency mentality. Just wanna get into, So though there is a valid reason to fear growth. In addition to the reward and gratification that growth brings to us, it also brings pain. Each step forward brings us into the unfamiliar, into possible danger. I spoke about my next development venture. It's unfamiliar to me. It may be dangerous, especially with all that is happening, the world developments. So I have to always, do recalculations and adjust my risk appetite, all in the effort of not letting the force of safety overcoming the force for growth. So each step forward requires me to give up something familiar and satisfying. So what we need to realize is that we grow towards greater complexities as people. So if we would see if vision yako in your personal development does not scare you, then please revise it. The path of growth often means that taking on more demands and responsibilities. It can mean a more difficult time, but it comes with personal contentment and personal gratification. So it's not easy to break through these forces, guys. There's a resistance to remain at the bottom of the pyramid because we are more safer there. In some adults, we find curious individuals who remain committed to developing their brains and bodies, forging new skills, but there are also many people who aren't committed to continuous growth. We come up with things like, I don't have time, I'm too tired, I don't know what to do, which sometimes is the truth. And we must acknowledge our truth, guys. We must always acknowledge our truth, because fighting it then gives us, it doesn't give us that contentment within ourselves. But again, if we deliberately plan to be less than what we are capable of being, then I tell you, we'll be deeply unhappy for the rest of our lives. We will be dodging our own capabilities, our own capacities, our own God-given purpose about us. So you can ask anyone in my workplace where I work, they would tell you that I never do just what I am employed to do. Because sometimes what we are employed to do is just a portion of what we are passionate about. And for some people, it's actually not passionate at all. So in my own environment, I look around and identify what else can I do that sets my heart on fire, So for me, I get involved into so many transformational projects, projects that touches human hearts, that enable human beings to grow from being better version of themselves to greater version of themselves. So I encourage you guys to also look around your space and stretch your limits. I'm not entirely employed to do transformational issues, but because those projects together with what I'm employed to do, they give me a sense of being, a sense of fulfillment and a sense of fulfilling my vision on earth, my mission, what God has put me on earth for. So I encourage you in your self-development journey that you never ever limit yourself to the four corners of your office. Never limit yourself to the words in your contract. I encourage you to break barriers, be ceiling crushers, thrill in your own personal development. That will set your heart on fire, and you'll be able to, you'll actually be in a beautiful space, and your heart will always be filled with warmth and gratification. And from my own experiences, if you fight the destiny, you fight what you were brought on earth for, it brings so much depression and anxiety. Whereas if you embrace it and try and look for ways of how can you creatively fulfill your mission, it leads you to freedom and fulfillment. Because all of us, we have an intrinsic motivation towards growth. So for me, there has to be a turning point in life that enables me to determine why am I on earth, what drives me as an individual, and to determine what drives me away from growth, blocking my personal evolution. That's where the key is. You must ask yourself these questions now and again. And then in the same breath, George Leonard, in his book, which is titled Mastery. He offers a powerful explanation. I'm sure you've heard this. I love this concept, the homeostasis. Homeostasis refers to the body's automatic efforts to maintain a constant normal state. I want to say that again. It's a body's automatic effort to maintain a constant normal state. So our bodies, our brains, it behave as humans, we have built-in mechanisms to stay within the narrow range and return to equilibrium when we move outside of those narrow limits. To better understand homeostasis concept, I always consider geyser, the home heating system that we all have in our houses. If you set a temperature, for example, you set the minimum 65 degrees and maximum 100 degrees. When the temperature drops below 65, a signal is sent through the system to kick the heat on until the environment returns to a safe temperature. So it's the same with what we are experiencing now with coronavirus. Because our internal systems are designed to maintain a homeostasis, that is why we are in culture shock, because we are biologically wired to stay in balance, to stay within what is known and comfortable. It is the same with it is the same homeostasis that pulls us back to equilibrium when we want to develop ourselves. I know that at some point, all of us do think about achieving certain goals in life, those dreams that are really, big, we dare to dream, all of us. I know that at some point, we do think about achieving those things in life, but this self-regulating system takes us back to our comfort zone. And what we need to realize is that homeostasis in our lives is influenced by so many factors, including the society beliefs as a Black community. Let me maybe share my personal story. After getting employed, it took me 3 full years to actually buy my first apartment, because the society had over the years created an experience that Uthandi as a woman will find a man to buy a house for her. It took me 3 full years to break through that dependency experience. Because it's important that we don't really grow up to, because sometimes that does not happen. So that's what the society believes does to us. So for me, it doesn't matter how long it takes for me to experience growth from my personal development goals. What matters is that eventually it does happen. Therefore, I appeal to all of us as young people to first make peace with homeostasis, acknowledge it, don't fight it, but continually challenge yourself to establish higher homeostasis set points. Last concept I would like to talk about, I think time is against us now. Last concept I'd like to talk about is the financial literacy. We cannot not talk financial literacy if we're talking about personal development. I think you would agree, that, guys, that we financial literacy is no longer a luxury. It is a necessity. The only way for us to crack through the economy is when we learn about personal financial management. This is really what you see is really accounting 101. And I assume that even if you're not good in accounting, but at least you can deduce some lessons from the diagrams. So the first diagram that you see shows, and I took these from the books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Richest Man in Babylon, those kind of books. That's where I took this concept. It's not my own. So the first diagram shows a person who has lived from hand to mouth. Whatever income received from a source, which is normally a job, it goes straight to expenses. And the second diagram shows a person who has, after finding a job, has jumped to accumulate liabilities, and therefore the income jumps straight to liability column in the balance sheet, and then leftovers goes to experiences. in the income statement, and that's it. And then the last diagram shows a person whom, after finding a job, kept her expenses on a low side with a view to accumulate assets. And can you pick up a personal financial development goals for this person? This person understands what once I accumulate assets, then those assets will work for me. The person does not want to work for the rest of their lives, but she wants her money to work for her. And she does that by accumulating my assets in the assets column for her income source, so that my assets can also serve as an income. Then it becomes easier to pay for expenses and liability column. And guys, let's be honest with ourselves. Diagram 1 and 2 are normally our realities. And these realities are influenced by so many factors, especially as in So our education system doesn't really prepare us to be financially savvy. I mean, personally, I'm accounting for the first time at master's level. So if I didn't develop myself informally on financial literacy, I would have also neglected the asset column, in the balance sheet. So the lesson for me on this is, if your personal development goals is to break through economy, then start working on your asset column. Nowadays, there's lots of information at our disposal, guys. During lockdown, there are lots of financial education or money matter discussions facilitated by different banks, our financial institution. So let's leverage on those platforms. Let's establish good relationship with our personal bankers. That's why they're called personal bankers. We need to leverage and learn from them. I understand the pressure that we sometimes get to meet the society standards, which sometimes leads us to bad relationship with money. But I cannot stress enough that it is important that in our journey of developing ourselves, we discover our relationship with money. Is it a healthy relationship or is it a sour relationship? And then self-leadership will be visible when you start acting on those discoveries. So in closing, I would like all of us guys as young people to be intentional on matters of self-development. Be intentional on refilling a paraffin, we must delight in personal growth. Overall human growth, like body, mind, and soul, overall, not only one aspect. Personal growth in academics, in business, health-wise, in families, being creative, whatever you set your goals as in your personal development path. It may require sometimes that for you to stand alone, because it's not always easy. Sometimes it actually scares you as a person. So what we focus on tend to guide the direction of our thoughts and our lives. If we focus on danger, then we will always think of the bottom pyramid. If we focus on understanding that we are more capable than what we think of, then we will always flourish. Therefore, as humans, we are always confronted with ongoing series of choices throughout life between safety and growth, dependency and independence, regression and progression, immaturity and maturity. And some of these choices are influenced, as I said, by society. But I strongly believe that all of us were created to live life to its full capacity. I mean, Jesus says with him, I came so that we may have life and have it in abundance. This then means all of us are capable of delighting in the abundance of Jesus's life. We must delight in the road to growth, which is reaching those little personal development goals. And that defines good self-leadership for me, which then brings a sense of achievement, internal or external rewards, and great confidence. So let's honor our needs for safety, guys, as humans, and let's courageously guide ourselves into the great unknown. We must transform ourselves slowly, steadily, and daily. So I invite all of us to make peace with homeostasis but continually challenge ourselves to establish higher homeostatic set points. And in the process of doing that, guys, I would like us to be kind to ourselves. You know, let's accept ourselves and have self-compassion. You know, if things are not going as you had planned, it's not time. You know, your time will arrive. Life is a journey. This is our path. You know, let's just embrace it and make the most out of it. And I would also like us to look out for one another, young people. For us to grow, we must genuinely support each other. And lastly, I pray and hope that we all experience a turning point in our lives, you know, and experience that natural process of leading ourselves towards reaching our personal development goals. I pray for all of us to have a bright, a colorful life, full of joy, full of love, and full of peace. Thank you, and may God bless all of us.
Thank you so kindly for such an inspirational topic, and thank you for your personal journey that you've shared with Wesley Guild SA. Indeed, people are now free to ask questions. I will put them up to you, but there's some few comments that have come through our Facebook Live page. Unonos Mahlangu says, it doesn't matter how long it takes to realize a dream, just keep on keeping on. There is a question that I want you to note, Ms. Ngono, from Wahasi, who asked a question. She says, I want to find out how to look for a mentor and what should you expect from a mentor. That's a question. How to find a mentor and what should one expect from a mentor? That's a question that is before us while we're still waiting for other questions, if there are any questions. But that's a question that I would like you to explore. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I didn't get the name of the person who was asking, but for me personally, there are many ways of looking for a mentor. But what really has worked for me over the years, as I have said, Uguti, I started identifying mentors at a very early stage in my career. So for me personally, I look for someone that I look up to, you know. So if that person's journey inspires me, then I would like to identify that person as a mentor, because there would be something that I look from that person that I would like, you know, to gain insights from them. So it's something, for me, it is someone that inspires me, a person that I know that I can get insights from. And that was how to look for it. And what can you expect? Really, the mentor-mentee relationship is between a mentor and a mentee. So in most cases, when I identify Umfundisi Ncombo as a mentor yami, I would then approach Umfundisi Ncombo and say, can you please be my mentor? And Umfundisi Ncombo would say, okay, set aside time, let us talk about this. Then I, as a mentee, and that's how I actually treat my mentees. I, as a mentee, need to then have an agenda for that meeting, because I'm the one who wants to learn here, to learn so that I develop myself in my personal development journey. So I'm the one who needs to come with an agenda and who needs to actually table how I would like this relationship to work out. So it really depends on what you want to do and what you want to achieve out of that session. Maybe let me just make an example with me. I said my next personal journey goal is actually venturing into the unknown. So I knew, I think like 3-4 years ago, that I'm going to be venturing into this, you know, this business venture. So I identified people who are in that sector where I'm branching off to. And then I set aside, approach them, set aside time to meet them, and then introduce myself, and this is what I would like to do. And when you have, you are ahead in this journey, so can you assist me in cracking through and establishing this venture? One of the things that we normally mistake in our mentors for is that mhlawumbe umuntu uzokupha imali yabo ukuthi uqala ke le venture yakho or the mentor is your think tank. So you come with your vision to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And then a mentor will probably say, okay, if you want financial literacy, go and read this book and then come back. Let's discuss what you have learned out of that book. So they always allow you to go into the unknown, you know, things that you are your blind spots, you know, and then they open up that, and then that's where you actually learn. And that's where you see, is this what I want to do, or this is not really for me?
Thank you so much for that response. That was a question from Amanda Khasi, and we're going to be wrapping up very soon. Siabulela Josie says, thank you for a wonderful presentation, simple and thought-provoking. And then there's a question that I wanted to note from Ayanda Nonkosi Kamashwabada, who asked a question: how do we start dreaming and developing goals? Sometimes you think about the future, but it is blank. The question is, how do we start dreaming and developing goals? Because Ayanda Nonkosi Kamashwabada says, sometimes you think about your future and it is blank. Can you please respond to that for us, Ms. Nongo? Thank you.
Ayanda, I am sure you know exactly how you want your future to unfold. The fact that you don't have resources at that time, or you think that it's not possible for you to reach there, it doesn't mean that you won't reach there. So you start by looking at yourself. Remember I spoke about topping up paraffin. Start by looking at yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. You know, all these things that we learn at school, guys, we have to practice in our own lives. You know, the SWOT analysis, what am I good at? What are my weaknesses? So that you understand what type of a person that you are. And always, every day, you know, try and look at opportunities that are available that will fulfill a path that you want to take as a person. I'm sure there are people around you. If there are no persons that are around you that you look out for, just approach. I mean, the Wesley Guild SA, Southern Africa, there are lots of Wesley Guilders that I know they can be able to assist, to actually try and guide you. I did say at the beginning, guys, that you must acknowledge which these processes are not natural processes to all of us. So some of us need guidance. So try and find people that can guide you, you know, in your own personal development journey to say, okay, I know this is what I want to do, but I actually don't know how to start, or I don't even know where to begin. So try and identify those people that can support you. All of us, we are where we are because we had people that supported us and people that trusted us, you know. So it's important that you never give up on yourself. You are on earth because there's a purpose for you to be there. So just work on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There is a last question that we'll take from Prudence Mweketi. She says, you briefly mentioned Carl Jung's individuation process. How important is it for an individual's growth and development? You remember you spoke about Carl Jung's individuation process earlier in your presentation. The question is, how important is it for individual growth and development? Did you get that question, Ms. Nongo? Okay, can just respond to that.
I was actually,
last question.
Yeah, I was actually trying to go back to the slide, but I can't find it right now.
Okay.
Individuation process, it is very important in a way that most of the time we get so confused by the noises, you know, and by the noises, I don't really mean people shouting at us, but by things that are happening in the society. So we get so confused and we actually even lose ourselves, you know, we don't even know who we are because we want to fit in, because, you know, there are these standards that we want to meet in order to be acceptable in the society. So the individuation process is really a process where you introspect, you know, you look at your own heart, you know, what is it that sets your heart on fire? So all these concepts are really similar, you know, things that make sure that whatever that you do in your path, in your journey of life, it's something that you are happy about. There is nothing that is said as us being trapped on things that we do not like. You know, once you do something out of love, then automatically it flourishes. So that's what the individuation process does again. And there are principles that they set there as to how can you go about doing that. So I would like most of the people to actually read that if they get time, but it's really a platform where you do introspection in your own personal development journey.
Thank you so much for the time that you've given to us. Indeed, we appreciate your time spending to prepare for this presentation, the time you took away from work and from family and from yourself, because I can see that you take yourself very serious, which is what is important, and we really appreciate that. Any closing remarks from your side before we close our session so that we can continue with the rest of the weekend? But we want to appreciate your time. Any concluding remarks from your side, Ms. Tono? Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank the Wesley Guild SA page for this platform. And I sincerely hope that all of us as young people, we get that encounter with God through our personal development journey. You know, I wish for all of us to actually reach our full potential and stretch our limits all the time to do more. The fact that we are employed and we are employees is well and good, but we must always have something on the side that assist us into reaching our personal development goals. And then it becomes easier if you are a person who actually was meant to run businesses. It becomes easier for you to branch off and satisfy that vision for yourself if you start working on it while you are still employed. So I'd like all of us to always be open-minded, always know that the world is our oyster. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just some last comments from the members of the Wesley Guild SA. Ulisa Makambi appreciates and say, thank you, Sisi. This session was indeed inspiring, and Prudence Mugeti appreciates your response to your question. I just want to end this session by addition from Uzandile Dotwana. Remember, we spoke about mentorship. She says that just to add on the identification of mentor, one can have direct relationship with a mentor, which is what Thandi outlined, or an individual who is successful in the space you want to venture into. You've mentioned that already. Start a journey to learn how they develop themselves into successful position, follow them, and understudy their ethos. And I think your point of genuinely supporting one another is key, and not compete one another at times unnecessary, but support one another is very important as young people, and hope that what Wesley Guild SA has created is a platform not of competition, but a platform of inspiring one another and genuinely supporting one another. Therefore, we appreciate your efforts. Tomorrow is Asonje Zimbabwe. We are going Mane, Maseru, Lesotho. We'll be having Northern Free State and Lesotho district leading us in our Wesley Guild Sunday. We have a sister from Maseru. Please tune in. And then Sunday, we'll have our normal services. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ngono, for your time. Thank you to Reverend Ngombo for your generosity, together with Secret 901 for hosting us on this platform. Are you still there, Zizi?
Thank you.
Come, let us pray. Still standazele ngokuzvalela umthandazo umfitshane. Over to you, Mama Ngono, namathandazo. Please pray for us, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes, yes.
Okay, let us pray. Nkulunkulu Baba, ebusuku nje Jehova namandla siza phambi kobuso bakho. Sithi uyingcwele Mesiya, akekho uNkulunkulu esimbonile ofana nawe. We asked you, Lord, mazivuke ekuseni ukuthi sicela uhambe nathi imini yonke, and you did exactly that. Moya oyingcwele. Siyabonga ke Jehova namandla onke. We thank you for the session that we just had. We thank you for the learnings, nkulunkulu namandla. We thank you for the wisdom that you bestow in us. And we thank you, Lord, that in our personal development journeys, you are going to be the light, nkulunkulu namandla onke. You are going to shine your light in us, nkulunkulu ngcwele. And the light that you're going to shine in us is not for us, nkulunkulu namandla onke. God, it's for us to shine that light to other people, nkulunkulu ngcwele, especially those who are previously disadvantaged, nkulunkulu namandla onke. Siyacela nethixo olungileyo uba usikhulise nkulunkulu oyingcwele singabantu abasha Jehova namandla kwimizamo yethu yonke esizamayo nkulunkulu oyingcwele. Sicela Jehova namandla ukuthi uhambe nathi ngezikhathi zonke nkulunkulu namandla. Ngisho sesiphuma babendleleni sicela wena mdali wezulu nomhlaba usiphinde usingenise endleleni nkulunkulu namandla onke. Usibize ngamagama Jehova namandla singaphumi nkulunkulu oyingcwele. Sicela uhambe nathi ke nkulunkulu oyingcwele sizongena kwi-weekend nkulunkulu namandla onke. Yiba nathi nkulunkulu namandla onke. We pray for the South African nkulunkulu oyingcwele and the whole world kwi-coronavirus nkulunkulu namandla onke. Siyazi ukuthi wena nkulunkulu oyingcwele awuhlulwa yilutho mdali wezulu nomhlaba. Konke baba kuzonqobeka ekugcineni nkulunkulu oyingcwele ngoba uthe wena singabanqobi nkulunkulu oyingcwele emhlabeni. Siyabonga ke Thixo sikunikeza udumo sithi lokufanele lonke nesiyo namandla egameni nasegazini lenkosi yethu Jesu Kristu namandla kuze kube phakade. Amen.
Amen. You mentioned before we close, Thandi, that you are into businesses. We give an opportunity to market yourself in this platform. This is a platform where we encourage fellow Methodists to come into this platform and market ourselves and engage one another in our business ventures. I'm giving you a free time to market your...
Okay, thank you, Mfundisi. I run Uthandekile Projects. Uthandekile Projects really focuses on health and safety files for construction companies. So most of the guys that has construction companies in the church in Durban, we actually offer that service to them. And currently, I just don't want to mention the venture that we're branching off to now until all the papers are signed. So once they are signed, obviously, I will publish on Facebook as to what I do. And then we also have a foundation under Uthandekile Project. Really, that's for giving back to the community. We focus more on high schools. I mean, there's a gap in terms of learners in high schools knowing what are the expectations when they go to universities. So we focus more on high schools. We visit the high schools. We do a presentation on career guidance. We do a presentation on life after high school. So we do get support from different structures, even from Durban municipality. We do get support, and then we'll visit that high school. So for people who would like to support that, we also really do welcome that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nqolo, and blessings to you and family. God bless you. Thank you.